About 2 weeks ago, I was driving home from the store, basically in jeans and a hoodie in my personal vehicle, and a working fire went out not far from my house. Rather than go left, I went right, and I went to the fire, and I blended in with the crowd, and I watched. I was curious, I just watching the crews work. And it reminded me that as company officers and chief officers, everything we do is to get them ready for that moment, to get them ready for that response. And there's a lot of ways we do this, but one of the biggest ways is with training. The thing with training is that in a perfect world, we would train on everything all the time, but we don't have that much time to do that. So we have to train on what our needs are, and every engine company, every battalion has different strengths and weaknesses. So as company officers and chief officers, we have to identify those strengths and weaknesses and develop our training plan based on those needs. This does a couple things. One is that you're using your time wisely and the limited time that we have to train on what you need to train on. The other thing is it creates relevancy. And it's when something you know you need to train on and that's what you're doing, it's relevant to you. And relevancy is so critical when it comes to training because it gets buy-in, and buy-in gets people to pay attention, to work hard on it, to do it, to want to do it. There's the desire there. And relevancy in training is probably top. And so as I started thinking about this and how I've created training plans, now people have taught me to do it, it really does come down to observing and watching and asking why. Why did my crews do this? Why did the battalion do this? Because if I can find out why and I can ask those why questions, I can then see our strengths and weaknesses and build a training program to match. So I'm going to do this 980 in 3 parts. This first part's going to be start asking why. The second part's going to be where does why come from? And the third one, I have some pictures from some recent fires that I will kind of go through and ask my why questions. So let me give you the example on the first part of this, which is really asking why. As I sat on this fire, I watched the operations. Most of the fire was already out by the time I got there, but there was still a lot going on, not to mention there was still the same hose in the ground, the ladders were where they were at, everything was still in place. And so as I watched some things, some simple stuff, like some really task level things. And I know Chuck has been pushing this hard, this, back to basics. And I really do think back to basics is the key. Again, basics based on what your basic needs are. And that's what we're really talking about. And so again, when we start looking at these things, you're not just looking at the strategic stuff that happened, but really task level. And so I'm watching and I see a hose line and where it's deployed, and I thought, that's really heads up. I don't know why that firefighter did that, but that was some heads up thinking. Why did he do that? The next step would be to ask him why, and when I figure out his why, I can then take that information, that strength, and I can build a training program to spread that through the rest of the battalion or my engine company. I can get what he did or she did, I can get that done by the rest by using what we've done in an incident, and again, building off of strength. I also saw some things that I looked at and said, why did we do that? We should not be doing that. And I can take that, I can find out when I talk to the person and go, why did you do that? And I can take that weakness or that thing, that what we don't want to have happen, and I can build a training program for my battalion or my engine company based on that, so that again we avoid it. We're making things better. We avoid it in the future, and then we do better. But all of this is based on needs, and you only can figure out needs by really observing and watching your crews work. How they interact at the coffee table, the dinner table, how they interact to each other on calls, and then what happens on these incidents. So you have to, at some point, and I understand that during an event it's difficult, or during an incident it's difficult to watch everything because you're working, but at some point you got to get out of your rig and you got to walk around that scene and you got to look where everything was placed. Why was that rope system put there? Why was that hose line pulled there? Why was that ventilation done? Why did they do this? And really walk into the structure, walk into the incident scene, and ask why. Start asking why on everything. And then you take that, and the next step is asking your individuals why they did that. This can be the hard part, and I'm going to quote something that came out of a Ted Lasso show, and I'm going to actually put the link to it because this scene I think is really good. And he makes a comment in there about being curious, not judgmental. And that's not why we're asking these questions. We're not asking to be judgmental and to judge why somebody did it. We're asking because we're curious. We want to know why, because if we know why, then we can understand, and when we understand, then we really know where our battalion or our engine company is now and how we can get them to the next level. So again, I encourage you, go out, start really paying attention to everything going on and ask why. And again, be curious, not judgmental.